Ubuntu is adding AI, a major new security vulnerability in Linux that's making headlines, and RightsCon chaos. All this and more coming up on This Week in Privacy number 51, so stay tuned.
Welcome back to This Week in Privacy, our weekly series where we discuss the latest updates with what we've been working on within the Privacy Guides community, and this week's top stories in data privacy and cybersecurity. I'm Jordan, and this week I'm joined by Nate. How you doing,
Hello.
Nate?
I'm good. I'm a little tired. It's been a busy day for me, but I'm excited to jump into these stories and talk about some privacy stuff.
Yeah, me too. All right, now let's dive into the biggest news in privacy and security from the past week. So the top story here is Ubuntu AI. Ubuntu's AI plans have Linux users looking for a kill switch. So if you haven't seen already, Ubuntu is basically planning to integrate AI features into the operating system, and people have kind of been moving away from Windows because of the AI features. So this is definitely an interesting move, but I do think this is definitely a move from the corporate side of Linux. For example, this is pushed by Canonical, the company that owns Ubuntu. So Canonical's plan to add AI features to Ubuntu has some users asking for a version of Ubuntu that does not include these features, while others say they'll stick with older versions of the Linux distro or even switch to a different one. So basically, the Canonical VP of Engineering, John Seeger, has basically already stated that they're not going to be adding a global AI kill switch, but users will be able to remove any AI features they don't want. So if you're kind of curious, like, what is this going to look like? So basically, he followed up on that and said it would be, stuff like accessibility tools like AI speech to text and text to speech, along with like agentic AI features, which I think we at Privacy Guides are definitely much more skeptical about this sort of feature. We've definitely talked about that before as a sort of privacy and security risk in a lot of ways. So that's also kind of a concern. And he also followed up that by saying the plan is to introduce AI features as a preview on a strictly opt-in basis in Ubuntu version 26.10. So I believe that is not an LTS version. That's actually just a standard release. But yeah, this is going to have a step in the initial setup wizard that basically asks you if you want to use the AI features. And he also clarified that these features will be added as snaps to the operating system. So if you're not really familiar with snaps, they're basically a package format that Canonical has moved forward with, and that is sort of their proprietary package format. So I guess to sort of move on from this, there was also another organization that has a Linux distro. So this was the CEO and lead developer of Zorin OS. And because, this is kind of becoming a sort of controversial topic because a lot of people are quitting Windows specifically because they don't want all the AI garbage like Copilot, these agentic features. Artyom Zorin, who's the CEO and lead developer of Zorin OS, said in a statement to The Verge that his distribution, Zorin OS, is AI agnostic, and that any potential AI features must adhere to our values of keeping Zorin OS secure, privacy respecting, and performant. So he also said that Zorin OS might adopt these features as they do appear to meet the requirements of respecting people's privacy and security. So, a lot of these features that he talked about were like local AI models. So that is a benefit. And I also wanted to cover another thing here that this article didn't actually show. There was an interview done by Phosphorce, and this was by Christine Hall. And basically, they interviewed John Seeger, who's as we said before, the VP of engineering at Canonical. And he did state in this interview, we're not setting shallow metrics on token usage or percentages of code written with AI, but rather incentivizing engineers to experiment and understand where AI tools add value, rather than force a single early choice AI stack. We're incentivizing teams to each pick something different and go deep, so we learn more as an org in the next 6 months. He also said that Ubuntu workers will never be replaced by AI. So that is a good thing, right? Whether that stays true or not is up for debate. You can say, oh, we just didn't need you anymore. Like, you can make up kind of any excuse you want to lay someone off. So I don't know if that's entirely, you can't really, follow that. But anyway, that's kind of my personal opinion on the matter. And I think I'm going to hand it over here to Nate, because I feel like I've talked on this quite a while. I do have some privacy and security concerns with some of this, but I kind of wanted to hear what your thoughts are, Nate.
Well, let's see. I think, well, first of all, I want to clarify a couple things just in case, like you did mention this, but just in case anybody missed it. So these are allegedly, these are going to be opt-in features. They're not going to come pre-shipped with the operating system. He did explicitly say that in future releases, like if you install Ubuntu from scratch, that the install wizard will ask you if you want to enable any of these features. They also said they're going to be rolled out as snaps, which, for better or worse, you can remove snaps. So this is not going to be baked into I mean, not the kernel isn't the right word to be technical, but they're not going to be baked deep into the operating system where it's a pain to remove them. But so overall, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of Canonical. They've definitely done some not great stuff in the past. Like, I think one of their releases came with like the Amazon app pre-installed or something, which was super weird. But I think it would be fair to say that they're not quite as bad as Google in this sense, or not Google, like Microsoft, these other big tech companies. I can't say I'd be terribly surprised to see them change course for now and to watch them become opt-out features, but I also wouldn't say it's inevitable personally. But I think one thing I will applaud is that I think there's kind of two sides of this, right? There's like the user-facing side of it where it's like, hey, we're going to offer you AI features. And I think at least the features they're offering are things that I personally think could be useful for people who want them, like accessibility features, speech to text, also troubleshooting. Like, Windows used to have a troubleshooting tool, and back around Windows 7, 8, maybe 10 as well. But in the early days, it was amazing. It was actually really, really good. You could go down, and it was in the taskbar. You go down and you like right click it or whatever, and you're like, hey, I'm having trouble with accessing the internet or whatever. And it would go through the steps, and 9 out of 10 times it would fix whatever the issue was. And then for some reason, Microsoft made it terrible to the point where they eventually killed it off. And I remember the last few times I tried to use it, it's like, hey, I'm having an issue. And it's like, oh, sorry, can't help you. Like, maybe try these pages that are completely useless and don't answer your questions at all. So the reason I bring that up is because if they're going to use one thing that AI is really good at least in my experience, is troubleshooting things. It's really good at feeding it error codes, and you tell it, like, I'm using this version of a browser, I'm using this operating system. And it's really good at being like, oh, this error code means this, try this. And I have personally found that to be very useful. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is, at least I feel like these are features that could potentially be useful for people who want them. I'm not saying that everybody has to go get them. But again, compare this to something like Windows Recall, or I think they even rolled AI into like Microsoft Paint now. And now you can do like generative image stuff. And it's like, I don't want that. Nobody wants that. This is stuff that's actually useful somewhat. But I think those are kind of my initial thoughts. I think unfortunately, somebody, Bam here asked, like, what are the alternatives then? Because a lot of beginner distros are based on Ubuntu. I think a lot of this really remains to be seen, in my personal opinion, because I mean, things like Mint, there is a Debian version. Like C's here pointed out, there is a version of Debian or Mint that's based on Debian, because honestly, Mint ended up making so many changes to Ubuntu anyways. They were like, it's easier just go back to Debian and start from scratch. Zorin OS, like you said here with the interview with the CEO of Zorin, he didn't say no. He didn't say we're never going to roll out AI features. He said we're going to be thoughtful about it, which again, like I fully respect. There are some people that are just hardcore, like no AI ever for anything, no matter what. And if you feel that way, then you have no guarantee that Zorin won't do this. I love Pop. My wife uses Pop, but also, honestly, they'd be the first one I would expect to add AI, except maybe like Red Hat, because they're corporate. Like you mentioned at the beginning, a lot of corporate pressure from the companies that really put a lot of funding into these operating systems or these particular distros. So I don't know at this time, to be totally honest. I don't know who would be safe from the AI stuff. I think, unfortunately, and feel free to correct me if you disagree, because I could be wrong on this, but I feel like what we're going to see is kind of like there's a lot of, like in the browser space, we see a lot of forks that remove stuff. So like WaterFox or like LibreWolf, for example, like Mozilla will roll this thing out and LibreWolf will take the AI out. Or Helium's not really a fork of Brave per se, but I found out recently it does actually incorporate some of Brave stuff. They didn't include Leo, for example. So I feel like we're going to end up in the same thing with, I feel like we're going to end up in the same vein with these Linux distros, where we've got the main players, the Fedora, the Ubuntu, and unfortunately they're adding AI, and it's going to fall on the people downstream of them to strip it out. Except for, I will say, Debian. I would be very shocked if Debian adds this, but also historically, Debian does not always necessarily keep the repo super up to date, and I personally have had that come back to bite me in the past. So yeah, I don't know. Did I miss anything on that one, or any further thoughts came to mind while I was saying that?
Not really anything to add on like the integration stuff. I think it's kind of like someone said here in the chat, I'm not against AI. Bam Owen said, point is, I'm not against AI if there's a reason for it. Their reason now is it's fashion, which, I don't see I just don't see a lot of the, like, I can see for accessibility, like I could see maybe if it's like a local system, like I'd need to know more about what data it's trained on, like how it's, how exactly it works. But I think a lot of these agentic systems are, it's very like fashionable. Like we did have a story that we were going to talk about this week, but it ended up getting the chop. But there was, we're seeing a lot of people using this agentic system to shop online, do all sorts of things, use their computer. Yeah, it's like handing over control of your computer to some massive AI company. It's not really the greatest thing to do, I would say, on a privacy perspective, at least.
Yeah, for sure. And I'm actually glad you mentioned that, because that was the other side I kind of forgot to mention very briefly, is like, I feel like it's very, I do, personal opinion, and I could be wrong. Thankfully I'm a fully able-bodied person, so I could be talking on my ass here, but I feel like accessibility is one area where open source historically lags behind. And I'm making that claim looking at my wife, who I'm very open about is extreme ADHD, like severe ADHD. And a lot of the time she struggles to use a lot of open source tools for things that most of us don't really care about. But for people like her, are like, it's her brain struggles to adapt to these tools because of just the menus, the user interface, just the way they look. And it's not even that she's trying to be picky. It's just the way that her brain responds to this stuff is, if it doesn't grab her, then she forgets to use it, or she has a hard time like using it properly and stuff like that. And so I feel like open source software, I think, has come a really long way in some accessibility tools. Like I know on Mastodon, people are really pushy, respectfully in my experience, but they're really pushy about adding like alt text to your images, for example. But I feel like we've lagged behind in a lot of other ways with like I know when Brave was trying to fight off recall, they had to take into account making sure the screen readers still worked and stuff like that. So I think where I'm going with this, I think the AI could be useful if it improves some of those accessibility tools, like maybe if it can automatically pick out a better color scheme for colorblind people, or if it can do the whole like speech to text thing really well. Not to get too far on that tangent, but I've mentioned in the past, somewhere in the past recently, that people used to recommend to me that you could use your screen reader to like listen to news articles while you're working. Cause I used to work a very physical job where I couldn't just sit and look at the screen and read an article, but they're like, yeah, use the screen reader and listen to it while you're working. And I just cannot listen to that monotone. Like it doesn't get the pauses right. It runs right through periods. And it's just like, oh, this is impossible to listen to. I can't do it. But I would love an AI where it like can more or less get the cadence and it can kind of, so I think that could be a good use for it. But I am really confused where he talks about like developers, like we're trying to get developers back on Ubuntu and like, I don't know, just that whole thing. It was one of those things that's like, you had me right up until that part. And then I'm like, what is he talking about? Like, what is he, I don't know if it's just them trying to stay competitive or something, or like Owen said that, it's the fashion right now, but it was really weird to me personally.
Yeah, I think like the biggest concern is, Canonical's developers are now using AI tools. With this confirms that they're using AI tools, which I think for developing software, I think AI can be kind of dangerous, right? Because, there's people submitting pull requests, there's people's developers working on certain parts. We know like these systems are based on a data set, and the data set can be poisoned. Like we've already seen it before, like even just making a bunch of spam websites with malware on it, and the AI just scans it and then acknowledges that as being part of its data set. Like it kind of is a bit risky, especially because these AI systems don't really know what's right and what's wrong. They just kind of are spitting out an answer that will please you, basically, which in a lot of times means it's just lying to you. So I think it's a little bit of a dangerous choice. I think them so openly admitting that they like this, they're considering allowing their developers to do this, or acknowledging that they are, is definitely going to push a lot of people away from Ubuntu, because in the past there's already like people who are very against it, because if you remember, originally, it was a very long time ago, but they had an Amazon shop integration, and people were like really sus of it because it's sending data to Amazon. It was a whole big thing. They removed it. They haven't done something like that since then, but it kind of burnt the bridges that a lot of people had with Ubuntu. So I think it's kind of not a great look for them. And I think a lot of people are going to be deciding to actually go with a different distro instead of sticking with Ubuntu, which I think a lot of people already have, because people really don't like snaps. Like, oh, snaps are disgusting. Like, why? The loopback devices in the disk thing, like, I don't know. I just don't like. I think snaps are probably the worst containerized package. But I think a lot of people find Canonical to be pretty controversial. So I don't think this is going to impact that much. But I think it has some knockdown impacts, right? Because like you said, there's so many distros that base their distro on Ubuntu. So like the changes that they make, like allowing their developers to use AI to develop the software, can have a knock-on impact and introduce security issues, like I was saying.
For sure. I don't have too much to add to this, but real quick before we move on, I would be remiss if I didn't point out over at Privacy Guides, our official recommendations for an operating system are how do I get that to go away? Okay. Our Linux, you may be not surprised. We recommend Fedora Linux. I don't know if these are in order per se, but I will say I've used Fedora a few times. I'm pretty happy with it. It's really good. Yeah, so this is our recommendation for people who are new to Linux. We do also recommend OpenSUSE Tumbleweed. we do recommend Arch Linux, which I can already hear all the Arch users in the audience. If you want an Atomic distribution, we do recommend Fedora Atomic, which it looks like we don't recommend Silverblue specifically, but I know Silverblue is one of the more popular ones there. NixOS is another one. And then, Unix and Tails aren't really kind of the things that you would use day to day, but they are the best for anonymity. And I will say, as a Cubes user, it is super. There's a very high barrier to entry, but it's very secure. I will say that. Secure Blue, Kick Secure. Again, those may not be right for everybody, but definitely go check that out on our website if y'all are thinking about jumping ship from Ubuntu. I would say start there as your recommendations. So, real quick, I do see a question from Lucas, and I think we will take questions a little bit later, but I just wanted to let you know that we did see that. So thank you. Do you have anything else to add to this story, Jordan? I think you're muted.
Oops, sorry. Yeah, so there's a comment from Peace Boy John. So they said, sadly, to answer the video title question, yes, sadly it is. It's definitely becoming less popular. I remember like back in the day, like Ubuntu used to be basically like the pinnacle of Linux. Like it used to be like the distro that everyone would like choose, and now it's sort of becoming like yeah, they made a lot of controversial decisions. But yeah, I don't really have much more to add here.
Yeah, I think I will real quick, since it's relevant. Bam Owen said few grandma-friendly distro recommendations there, and you're thinking about not only what can the tech-savvy people do, but also everybody else, and I think that's really valid. I am always championing that mentality myself of like, hey, that's great that you use this thing and you're not affected by this like age verification law or whatever, but what about everybody else? So I really applaud that. But one thing worth noting is, privacy is a spectrum. And personally, I think Fedora is pretty user-friendly. I mean, obviously, there's always going to be certain people that do struggle more with technology in general. But I mean, like I mentioned earlier, my wife uses Pop! OS. She doesn't have any issues with it at all. She almost never asks me for troubleshooting. I think she asked a few months ago, and that was the first time in literal years that she's like needed help with something on that. So, I mean, Pop! OS is not an official recommendation, but my point is like, it's a spectrum, right? Like Fedora is not as secure as Cubes, but I don't think we're telling everybody to go out and get a Cubes computer because that is quite a bit of a lift. So it's I think even moving to something like Ubuntu, even if they do add the AI, even if it's not perfect, I would argue is way better than using something like Windows or, moving somebody to a Mac instead of Windows. So, which I know there's a price problem there for the record, but point being, I see you. I do agree with you. Like some of these recommendations might be a little bit out of reach of the less tech savvy, but I think there's still a lot of good options that do move the needle. So it's not always about being perfect. Sometimes it's about outrunning the other hiker. I hate to say, but yeah.
Yeah, and I do think it's important to know, like, you don't have to use the recommendations that Privacy Guides has, right? We specifically chose those because they offer the best like privacy and security stuff. You need to, look at other sources, find what you need for your situation, like, because that's the most important thing, right? Like, if you're not tech savvy, then maybe those recommendations aren't going to be good for you. And there's no point in it being more private and secure if you can't use the operating system. So yeah, just definitely don't feel pressured into using any specific distro. You need to think about what, your needs are. And if your needs are to use something that's a little bit easier to use, then definitely don't feel like you're you have to use what we recommend.
For sure. Well said. All right. On that note, we're going to move into some sad news coming out of Europe, which is Europe is attacking, not as a whole, but a couple of European countries are attacking anonymity right now. Well, arguably Europe in general has got some problematic laws they're proposing right now. But we're going to focus specifically on anonymity. And first up, this came in first on April 23rd. Turkey wants to ban anonymous VPNs. Um, and I mean, honestly, it's pretty straightforward. They want to require VPNs to basically keep logs. I don't think it specifically said to keep IDs, but basically they don't want anonymous VPNs anymore. They want all VPNs to be able to be tied back to a user. There's Oh man. Okay, so the headline is pretty straightforward, if I remember correctly here. I mean, I just read this a couple hours ago. I should remember pretty well. But there's a yeah, let's see here. So the licensing proposal would add a legal ceiling. Right now, Turkish users can route around blocks. A licensing regime would close that door. So yeah, there's a lot of concerns here about the more veteran listeners in the crowd will know that just being under surveillance changes people. When people know they're being watched, they behave differently. So not having somewhere that people can go to freely research and explore, you know, that's one of the reasons we're such big proponents of anonymity on the internet. But also just it's another way to help try to keep government in check, right? Like censorship is one of the first signs that something is not right in your country. I don't know about one of the first signs, but it's up there for sure. It's not a good thing. So, you know, when a country can require VPNs to keep logs like this, then even if they never actually say, "Hey, block this website," they can de facto block it because they know everybody who's done. Yeah. Anyways, to the surprise of no one, this is being described as a measure to help protect the children. I haven't seen this argument in a long time. They said that this has something to do about attackers reportedly drawn to violent mobile games. So we have now regressed back to 1990, where we are blaming violent video games for all our problems. You know, I play boatloads of Civilization, and I have yet to try to take over the world. I play quite a bit of, lately I've been playing a lot of Stardew Valley. I have yet to move to a farm. Trying to think what else. I've played tons of Jurassic World. I have yet to bring dinosaurs back to life. So I don't really know where they're getting all this from, but you know, like I said, we're back in the 90s. Separate but part of the same law, they said that they also wanted to add a parent-controlled child SIM cards, which I'm not necessarily opposed to that, but I would have to see what the implementation looks like, and also a cap on how many mobile numbers a single person can register, which is, I don't know, that just feels unnecessary to me. But yeah, so I mean, that's kind of the thing there is Turkey's trying to, they interviewed Proton VPN for this particular article. So, I mean, take it with a grain of salt. We also recommend Molvad. We also recommend iVPN. But one of the things that I like is Proton didn't even try to appease Turkey. They were basically like, yeah, now is the time to sign up. Now is the time to download the app, because once you have it, they can't really go in and force you to remove it. And things like Proton, for example, do have built-in censorship resistance. Molvad probably does too. I think it requires a little bit more manual configuration though. But yeah, so I mean, and if you have an Android, you can always go to their website and download the APK. So yeah, that's a thing there. And real quick, we'll also move over to Greece, who wants to ban anonymity on social media. And specifically, interestingly, I'll give them credit. They didn't go for think of the children. They went for toxicity. And I mean, this is basically it. Again, the headline is what it says it is. They don't want people to be able to make anonymous social media accounts because they're tired of people being crappy online. My first argument would be, I think there are a lot of people who are willing to be garbage without anonymity. We see plenty of people on Facebook using their real names and their real faces, and they're still being terrible. I thought this was such a weird, this is one of my personal things, quoting the minister who spoke to this article. He said, in ancient Greece, everyone could express their opinion openly and by name. They would raise their hand and share their view. This should inspire us as we shape a new digital democracy. Yes, but the thing that people always forget with this stuff is, like, back in ancient Greece, that wasn't written down. They didn't sit there and take a roll call of everyone who was in the audience. They didn't sit there and write down every single thing a person was said. And more importantly, they didn't sit there and sell it to advertisers. And they didn't sit there and put it in this database that you can access from anywhere in the world. Like, these are not one-to-one comparisons, because even like court records, you know, as I say, like, they didn't sit and write everything down. Like, yeah, court records, they sit and write everything down. But again, those are not sold to advertisers. You know, 1,000 years ago, that stuff wasn't kept in a warehouse, a data center, where you could, again, pull it from anywhere in the world. Like, back in the day, if I lived in California and I wanted information on somebody from New York, I had to fly to New York and get it. And the internet has removed all these barriers. That's not really a one-to-one thing. I will say that they do make some good points about, they talk about how with elections coming up, Greece has a real problem, which I think everybody does these days. There's a real problem with like fake news, disinformation, trolls. We know that is a thing. Governments around the world on every end of the political spectrum are very heavily engaged in propaganda, trying to sway public opinions, trying to, spread certain narratives. And I will say, not that I'm encouraging it, but I do think it was funny that when Twitter suddenly decided to start saying what country everybody was based out of, it's amazing how many American accounts were suddenly based out of like Moscow. But I don't think that's a uniquely American thing. I don't think that's a uniquely left or right thing. I also don't think it's enough to really justify this. I think that's a very dangerous road that they're headed down, but yeah, that is unfortunately what's going on in Europe right now. Did you see anything in these articles that I missed, Jordan?
Oh no, I think that was a really good recap of what's going on. I mean, Peace Boy John 424 said in the chat, violence in video games is the biggest excuse by far for fascism control over our freedom and privacy. Yeah, I think it's such an easy scapegoat. I think what we used to see, I wasn't around back then, but I'm going to assume this is what I'm going to, from research, I guess I can say, people used to say that about television, you're watching all this TV, it's going to turn you into a violent criminal if you're watching all these violent shows. And as far as I know, there's actually no evidence that that's even true. So, there's always these extreme cases where there's someone who's a serial killer and they enjoyed GTA 5, and it's that the correlation doesn't equal causation there. It's irrelevant, right? Did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to back up what you were saying is every it's funny because I do listen to a lot of true crime, and they actually know when there's a serial killer that it's yeah, he was really Jeffrey Dahmer historically was really into, I think it was The Exorcism 3. And they note that because it is so unusual. It's normally they're not the stereotype. I mean, there's several different serial killer stereotypes, but it's not always the person who's super into horror movies and stuff like that. It's I mean, look at Dennis Rader, BTK. Dude was a freaking Boy Scout leader. He went to church. I think he was a deacon at his church. It's I mean, slightly off topic, but it's not an indicator. And especially when you think of how many this past year has been a huge year for horror movies. How many people went and saw Bring Her Back and then didn't go home and kill somebody? It's just, it's cherry picking the things of I know I don't want to downplay it or anything, but there was a shooter recently who made a simulator in Roblox, I think. How many millions of people play Roblox and don't do something like that? And I'm not trying to let Roblox off the hook. I know they've got other problems, but yeah, it's just like you're saying, it's selectively cherry picking, oh, this makes it look bad. And it's yeah, but they're not necessarily related like that. So
yeah, 100%. I mean, this is just I think with the VPN thing as well, I think this is where we see a lot of the issues of these centralized platforms like Google Play and the App Store, right? Because like you said, people are kind of rushing to download this because the Turkish government is they can kind of compel Apple or Google into banning a lot of these things. We already saw that. I think there was, when you did your interview with Cindy Cohen, she mentioned there's an ongoing legal case in the US about the US government forcing a app that was used to track ICE agents to be removed from the App Store. And, it's a tool of censorship, really. And maybe there were legitimate reasons for that being removed, but, it's clear that it's used as a method to control the access to things people can run on their devices, which seems not great. So in this case, I think, it's good that Proton VPN they're kind of one of the only companies that are sort of actually putting their money where their mouth is and providing a free VPN service. I'm sure there's loads of people in countries where there's a lot of censorship using their free VPN to bypass the firewalls. And now it's like you don't even need an account. You can just use it as a guest. So it is it's really good to see that they're doing that. But yeah, I think it's unfortunately there's been a couple, I think it was the UK that kind of has pushed this whole like social media anonymity ban thing, and then Australia, and then there's US states that are doing it, and then there's, you know, all sorts of countries that are doing this stuff now, which kind of sucks. But yeah, it feels like every week there's like a new story for age verification or like something like that. Ugh.
Yeah. For the record, I think Australia was first and everybody's been copying them. But yeah, the UK is definitely, I think, taken it a lot further. They've openly floated the idea of banning VPNs and yeah.
Okay.
So,
I think it
not
was
great.
the UK did it. It was, I think the UK was blocking adult content, and then Australia did the social media ban. Yeah. I think that might be what it was.
Gotcha.
Social
Okay.
media
That sounds
ban
about
is
right.
probably worse though, because that kind of affects a lot more people, right? Yeah, I don't know what our government is doing. Help me, please help me.
Same. Lucas here said, I used to live in a sanctioned country and paying for a VPN was not possible. Yeah, I mean, I know there is Tor. Tor, I think, is sometimes a little bit easier to block, but also has more, it also has like the openly available proxies and workarounds. But yeah, it's, he said it's great having Proton VPN for free. So yeah, that's super awesome. It's also, not to like get this too far off topic, but we are big fans of things like Monero to try and pay for things anonymously, because those are significantly harder to sanction by governments who try to do this kind of stuff. So
yeah, I think it's actually quite bad when there's, you know, the sanctions like that, because a lot of times it's like, you know, even if your account is detected from originating from a country that's sanctioned, basically your account is immediately blocked on a lot of services and stuff. So it is definitely a problem. It's good that like Proton VPN has a way for people to do that. I think it's definitely an issue. Like people don't really think, because like a lot of us, at least on the privacy guides team, are from, you know, countries where there's no sanctions, no major internet restrictions. Well, anyway, you know, it's sometimes it is good to understand there's other people that also have different needs. Yeah, it's definitely good what Proton is doing for those countries.
for sure. All right. On that note, I think that's all we have to say on that story. So I'm going to turn it over to Jordan here to tell us about this exciting new Linux vulnerability that I've seen pop up in quite a few of the headlines. So Jordan, why don't you take it away?
Yes, thank you. So this one is kind of been floating around, and just to like, I guess for people that have been following a lot of Linux vulnerabilities in the past, this is sort of a continuation of, you know, vulnerabilities in Linux that local privilege escalation vulnerabilities in Linux that have been basically using a specific vulnerability in Linux, right? So before there was dirty cow and dirty pipe. So if you have seen those before, this is a similar thing. I'm going to kind of read from their press release, because, you know, I'm not the most I'm not a security researcher. I'm not the most knowledgeable about this. So I'm going to kind of just quote a lot from this article here, and we can kind of discuss after. So basically this is a local privilege escalation. So that means it's not a remote privilege escalation, which is much more damaging, right? So you need to have local access to the machine, which, you know, could mean that it affects more shared hosting environments, for instance, where there's multiple users on a single system. And when we talk about local privilege escalation, we mean going from a regular user, unprivileged user, to a privileged user. So going from a user account to like a root user account. And now I'm just going to quote from the press release here. Who is affected? If your kernel was built between 2017 and the patch, which covers essentially every mainstream Linux distribution, you are in scope. CopyFail requires only an unprivileged local user account, no network access, no kernel debugging features, no pre-installed primitives, and the kernel crypto API, AF_ALG, ships enabled in essentially every mainstream distro's default config. So the entire 2017 to patch window is in play out of the box. And they also discussed here that distributions we directly verified. So 24.04 LTS Ubuntu, Amazon Linux 2023, RHEL 10.1, RHEL 10.1, SUSE 16. So those were like kernel 6.12 to 6.18. So that is, it affects quite a lot of things. And it also specifies which users are most impacted. So multi-tenant user Linux hosts. So like, shared dev boxes, basically where there's multiple users on the same system that are unprivileged, which basically multiple users are sharing a single kernel. That could be a user could use this exploit to basically gain root user privilege, Kubernetes, and container clusters. So if you're running a Kubernetes cluster, then it's possible that one of the containers, if it had this exploit, it could gain root access and access the host, basically. And that is kind of concerning. CI runners and build farms. So basically, CIs are basically the system that developers use to automatically build packages based on their code. So these automatically run after merge requests are made. So basically, it can possibly, insert malware into the. It could basically, have a PR request that basically allows the user to gain root access to the runner, which can affect other projects if the runner is, shared by other systems. Cloud software as a service running user code, so like notebook hosts, agent sandboxes, serverless functions. And then they also talk about like standard Linux servers, single tenant production is not really as much of a concern because you'd need to have stolen credentials to do this, and single user laptops and workstations, which is like probably the majority of like privacy guides users here, is a low risk because you're the only user basically. So you would need, basically if someone gained access to your system, they could do this, but that's not very likely. That's not very in scope for a lot of people. So I guess kind of we can kind of go into the write-up of how this works. I'm just going to read sort of how this works. So AF_ALG, which is the exploitable kernel module, is a socket type that exposes the kernel's crypto subsystem to unprivileged user space. A user can open a socket, bind to any authenticated encryption with associated data template, and invoke encryption or decryption on arbitrary data. No privileges required. And basically it uses the splice core to transfer data, file descriptors, and pipes without copying, passing page cache pages by reference. So splicing a file into, so it says when a user splices a file into a pipe and then into AF_ALG socket, the sockets, oh my goodness, this is like extremely complicated. So I think if you want to read a little bit more about how this is specifically works, then definitely check out the press release because I'm not going to read the whole thing here. But last I checked, this is still effective in basically all the stable Linux distros like Debian and RHEL, Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So Yeah, this is like slightly concerning, but I think for a lot of our users, I don't think this is particularly of an issue, because it does need one user to basically have like local account access, which is not really that useful. It's also good to mention that this is like, we kind of talked about this last week, but with the Claude Mythos stuff, this exploit itself was actually found using an AI assisted method. So we're kind of seeing that more and more. Basically, it was able to identify and audit the whole crypto subsystem and find this vulnerability, basically. So, I think that's interesting. I think we're going to see more and more of these like AI assisted exploits because, it's definitely able to analyze the code a lot more easily than, because you kind of have to be a pretty experienced pen tester and security researcher to like find these exploits. So, if someone's not looking that carefully, then it's definitely possible that it really needs like someone to look quite closely to find these things. So using an AI model definitely allows that. I think what I've heard though with these AI audit systems is that they do cost a lot of money. Like they cost a lot of basically they cost a lot of tokens, I believe. That's what they called in the AI sphere. Like you need to basically use tokens and that costs a lot of money to basically analyze every line of code. So this is probably not the cheapest way of doing things. I feel like if you're spending $20,000 on like an AI assisted audit, it's like, why don't you just like pay someone to do that? But I mean, I guess it's easier because you don't have to deal with another human. So maybe, but I'm not really sure. This is kind of an ongoing thing with page cache corruption. So this was the same issue that Dirty Pipe and Dirty Cow had. But in a lot of those cases, it was there was a lot more specific requirements, basically. And where this is different is that there's no conditions. It's basically any system. So, and there's no like things like that. So someone here sees LF. I think the issue for workstations would be a phishing attack that could get a local user to execute the exploit on their own, or a chaining of an RCE with CopyFail to achieve root access. I think that's definitely a possibility. Yeah, it's like it is possible to be for that to happen. I'll also say like this. I was looking at this yesterday, so I'm not sure if it's super up to date, but I saw Debian Stable still hadn't fixed this issue. And it seemed like people were, I don't know, not taking a very proactive approach to fixing this. And I think maybe it's because there's not that much of a risk to workstations. Maybe there's a limited attack surface because this does only sort of affect shared hosting instances. I'm not sure, but yeah, do you have anything you wanted to add on this one, Nate?
I just had a couple of quick thoughts. I mean, for one, I wanted to drive home. I know you already said this, but I really want to drive home that this requires local access, which C's is absolutely right. I mean, that was my first question because this is also too technical for me to fully understand. So I was asking about this the other day when it came up. In theory, yes, somebody could like get a hold of your, for example, I use SSH to manage my servers, and theoretically, if they somehow got a hold of my private key, then they could log in as me, and now they're in there. But it's not one of those things that typically when we talk about a remote access thing, it means that you wouldn't need to take any additional steps like that. You wouldn't need to phish somebody. You wouldn't need to like plant. Personally, I used to laugh at these as surveillance report all the time. Not laugh per se, but like there would always be these big, like, oh man, there's this really crazy, like your phone can turn into a microphone while it's sitting on your desk. So the first thing the researchers did was plant malware on the phone. And I'm like, well, no shit at that point, dude. Come on. And we saw that every single time. So that's not to like downplay these and say they don't matter, but just to kind of put it in perspective of like, this is important. This is something that they should definitely fix, if for no other reason than the fact that it can break out of containers. And I don't know about you guys, but I think a lot of people who host, self-host, I think the vast majority, if they're using a VPS, they're using shared hosting. Very few people, I think, are willing to pay for a dedicated server for any number of reasons. So it is important to patch, but it's definitely not like something that's just going to, randomly start getting exploited. There's some additional steps to take there. And then for the AI one, like not to defend AI too much, but you were talking about like, I don't know why they wouldn't just pay a normal auditor at that point. I definitely think human auditors need to be in the loop. I think it was, I don't want to slander anybody. Was it Entei recently? Somebody, one of the smaller projects we like that kind of had an impromptu audit. There was like an AI company that approached them and they're like, hey, we did this audit and we found these things. And like, I hesitate to call it an audit because it didn't sound like it was super formal and it didn't sound like it was really sophisticated. But at the same time, I do have respect for the idea that it is, in a way, it's another set of eyes. It's another perspective. It might notice things that you miss, either just through like you're tired, your eyes are glazing over from looking at 5 million lines of code all day. It can move way, way faster. So I'm not trying to say it's perfect. I know it's probably going to miss things here and there, but I don't know. I guess where I'm going is I could see value on it. Again, I would hope people are not relying solely on AI for their audits, but yeah, I don't know. But yeah, there probably is a point where it's like, we're spending twice as much on this when we could get a human audit that's just as good. I don't know. I could see arguments both ways, but that just kind of came to mind while you were talking about that.
Yeah, so that is a good point to bring up. I definitely think it's kind of a little bit silly to have everything be, you can't like only rely on AI, I guess. There has to be some like human input, but I guess an update to this as well. Debian has released fixes on Bookworm and Trixie. Forky and Sid both had it fixed earlier, so that's fine. But yeah, they both released fixes for stable releases. If you're on Bullseye, it's still vulnerable, but you should probably update at this point. Like Bullseye is going to be phased out soon, so probably look at updating to Bookworm or Trixie at some point. But yeah, I don't think this is going to affect most desktop users. I think this is, like you said, it's like concerning because people have VPSs on these like shared hosting platforms, and I think that's a bit scary that there's a possibility of being able to break out of a container, or I'm not sure if I guess it depends on what software the hosting provider uses, but yeah, basically anything that uses a shared kernel, which I'm not sure if it actually would affect VPSs. I think it would more affect like shared hosting, like, WordPress hosting sort of thing, but
cPanel and stuff like that.
Yeah, stuff like that, where it shares a single kernel, because I think, yeah, the kernel, it maybe would allow you to get root access of the VPS, but it wouldn't allow you to break outside of that. So yeah, definitely an interesting story. This one was brought to our attention by Freya, who's also in the process of doing a write-up on this. So if you probably want to get some more insight, definitely check out privacyguides.org/news if you want to keep up to date on some of the latest privacy and security news, and kind of get Freya's thoughts on this. And they had a little bit more time to look into this, so they've probably got some more condensed thoughts. But I haven't really seen too many people talking about this, so I was kind of surprised that no one was talking about it. So I thought it would be good to at least mention. I'm also kind of in the boat where like this kind of goes over my head a little bit. I'm just reading what the press release says. So hopefully I did at least a decent job of explaining it. Definitely check out the article if you want to learn more. But yeah.
I feel like I've seen it pop up in my news feed a little bit over the last couple days, but I think it's still pretty new. So, I mean, it's already got a Wikipedia page apparently, so that's cool.
Where's our Wikipedia page?
What's that? Oh yeah, I know, right? Man, we have this conversation all the time. It's crazy that we don't have one. But anyways, I actually did want to one thing that you said that somebody else said, and I meant to bring this up in the first story, but Bam here said that it's hard to patch an old kernel such as Motorola on Android 10 that stopped releasing security patches. Number one, I think Graphene OS posted a big thing on Twitter or Mastodon about how this doesn't really affect Androids in the same way, because I mentioned this before, and I actually got this from Kerry Parker, one of his guests that he interviewed, is from a security perspective, when we made mobile phones, we as a society, we kind of took all the lessons we learned from desktop computers and fixed a significant number of them. So things about like, I believe phones use like immutable updates, things about like app permissions, things that phones do really well from a security perspective, but desktops have still not caught up. So, I mean, it probably wouldn't affect Androids in the same way, but going back to what you said, and also this, and also the first story mentioned that people were saying like, oh, I'm just not going to update Ubuntu because of this AI stuff. I don't mean to sound arrogant, but y'all are absolutely insane with those kind of takes. I still see people commenting on old YouTube videos where we talk about like AI coming into Android, and they're like, well, I'm just going to stay on Android 9. And it's like, cool. I hope you're not going to touch the internet with that thing, because all of these updates, yes, they do often come with crap that we don't want, like AI, but they also come with really important security fixes. And I don't know, just my personal take, I think you're really gambling there, especially the longer it goes on. If you're like 6 months out of date, like, and you don't really use your phone that often or use it for anything sensitive, okay, fine, whatever. But the longer it goes on, the more and more severe vulnerabilities they're going to find, the easier they're going to become to exploit. It's just, to me, that's extremely, I wouldn't do that if I were you personally, but not my phone. So I guess y'all do whatever you want, but I don't know.
Yeah.
I wanted to address that. I think people who choose not to update in protest of features, I think you're not getting a good trade-off on that one. I think you should look into just a completely different solution. Like on Android, for example, go to Graphene where there are no AI features. So yeah.
I think, people have definitely very specific decisions for choosing things. And I don't know, I think a lot of times a remote execution vulnerability is probably not too likely if you're being careful. But I mean, obviously, I don't know. You have to kind of know what you're doing. Otherwise, I could say it's definitely probably not the greatest, idea.
Yeah, I mean, and I know there's always situations, right? Like there's definitely a lot of people who live in countries where like they don't sell pixels and an iPhone is too expensive and stuff like that. But I'm more addressing it to the people who are doing it strictly out of protest. Like, I just don't want these AI features. Well, then you should probably move to another operating system. Like if you have the resources, I don't know. That's just weird to me that it's like, I could update to something else, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to stay on this release. And it's like, okay, but the longer it goes on, the more vulnerabilities, and in time, like things are going to stop being supported. Eventually a lot of services you use are like, even who was it recently? I think Firefox recently was like, we're going to stop supporting this old version of Windows that I didn't know anybody still used. But yeah, so I don't know. Just feels like the longer you go on, the more you're opening yourself up to risk. But that's my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely think it does depend. I was using, I guess I'm not using it anymore, but I was stuck on using an older phone for like quite a lot of years. And back when Google Pixels only had like 2 years of updates, like that was so abysmal. It was so ridiculously expensive as well. Like it was like an $1,000, I guess, like 600 USD phone. And, it only had 2 years of updates. And it was like, I ended up using that phone for like 6 years. So, like 4 years of not getting updates. Probably not the greatest idea, but still like, I never got hacked. So I don't know, maybe I was lucky.
Yeah. I don't know. I think we'll leave that one there. I think we could argue this one all night.
Okay. So I did see there was a question here from I'm wondering, and is there any sign that other companies will adopt the privacy screen feature Samsung has introduced, and what do you think of it? I mean, I think it's interesting. I think the issue that I've had with like the privacy screen protectors is they kind of make your screen look awful, and they are, I guess, a strain on your battery because it's basically covering the screen with like a film, a dark film. So, I think it's interesting. I think it's a better alternative to a privacy screen protector, but I think, there are trade-offs. Like there was clearly trade-offs with the Samsung Galaxy S26 Ultra. Like there was trade-offs for having that on the screen, and I'm not sure if the trade-offs are worth the benefit, especially because not everyone needs that feature, right? So like people were buying it because it was a novelty, but once it stops being a novelty, it's just, for a lot of people, it's just a downgrade. Like a lot of people don't care about this feature. Like maybe you don't go on public transport. Like if you don't take public transport, or you don't, open your phone in public, then this feature is not really that useful for you. So I don't know. I think it's I think it is sort of a gimmick. Like it is like, oh, whoa, look at this cool new feature that we added. Like it's really cool. Like everyone was kind of obsessed with it for a while because you've never seen anything like it, right? But I think it's not very likely. It's like how the Google Pixel added like a temperature sensor. It's like cool, but like no one's like, I've never used that feature ever. Like I don't need that. Like it's a gimmick. Like it's a thing that's like there as like a selling point for the phone. That's, oh, look at this extra thing you can do that you might want. But I think for a lot of people, they're like, oh, the screen brightness is not as good because it has this feature. It's like, it's kind of just not people just want the best, the biggest and the best. And, really, you kind of have some trade-offs to that feature, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I'm the best person to weigh in on this because I'm a notorious Samsung hater, which for the record, I finally addressed this. I've had several comments over the last year or so where people ask like, Nate, why do you hate Samsung so much? And to be fair, I've said it over the years, but I don't expect people to go back and watch like every single podcast I've ever been on. So I finally wrote a blog post over on my personal, over at the New Oil, where I outline, it'll be public on Sunday. Right now it's like early access, where I outline all the reasons I'm so angry at Samsung. And for the record, this is not an official endorsement from Privacy Guys. It's my personal blog post. But I did mention the privacy screen, and basically I'm with you. Like, I think it's privacy theater because Samsung has had so many other things where they could provide actual meaningful privacy and security to their users. And instead, like, I don't want to go off on too much of a rant here, but like Samsung's whole thing is flash. Like there is no substance to Samsung phones, in my opinion. And their whole thing is like celebrity endorsements and flashy features. And like, don't get me wrong, I've known people that have Samsung phones and they love their phones. It's almost like a cult. It's like browsers. People love their Samsung phones. And don't get me wrong, like some of the features, they're like, oh, I can do this thing. And I'm like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I get it. But like once you dig under it and you look at like what's the privacy policy, look at some of the history of vulnerabilities they've had, look at how they've responded to some of those. I don't remember all of it. That's why I wrote it all down. But when you look at all that stuff, it's like, wow. And then on top of it, at the very end, I talk about this. I'm like, what really takes the cake is they are the 7th most valuable brand in the world. Like there's Google and Apple are in like the top 5 or whatever. And then Samsung's in the top 10. And then the next phone maker is freaking Huawei all the way down to like 50 something. And so it's like you have, for all intents and purposes, as much money as Apple and Google, and yet you can't make a phone even remotely as secure as them because you're too busy spending your money to pay for BTS. So yeah, I hate Samsung. So yeah, I mean, if you want to see all the reasons I hate them, again, that'll be public on Sunday. But That's what I think about it. Like, sure, it's a cool feature, and like I don't mind it. Like, I'm not mad that it exists, but to me, it's just it's theater. It's like, oh, look at this cool privacy feature we gave you. There's no actual privacy built into the phone. There's no actual security built into the phone. Certainly nothing on the level of Google and Apple. And don't ask about Knox. I addressed that in the blog post too. And so it's like, it's just the example I used was Oreos. Like Samsung is like Oreos. It's tasty. It's delicious. I love Oreos. I do. They're one of my favorite junk foods. Nobody would eat a box of Oreos and be like, I had a great dinner. I mean, you might eat a box of Oreos for dinner anyways, but you're probably not going to feel great afterwards. You know what I mean? Like, there's no substance there. Nobody would eat that and be like, yeah, that was a healthy meal. Like, and that's how I feel about Samsung. So the privacy screen feature, I wouldn't be against other companies adopting it because, again, I don't necessarily hate the feature itself. It's just coming from Samsung specifically. It's like, it's unfortunately, this has happened before. It's like serial killers that get caught and then they complain about like, oh, movies depicting my life are disrespectful to my victims. And it's like, you killed your victims. I don't care. Like, that's not disrespectful that we're making fun of you. You're like, don't pretend you care about this stuff. So that's just the same vibe I get from Samsung. It's like, oh, look at this cool privacy feature. You don't care about user privacy. So anyway, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, they'll be like, we're protecting your notifications from prying eyes. Meanwhile, we're sending all of your notification content to Facebook or something like that. It's like,
exactly.
Yeah, doesn't really make sense. But I get it. I get what you're saying. I definitely think that's a good point to bring up. I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't be opposed if Google was like, we're going to add this. I wouldn't be opposed to it. But like,
yeah, same.
I don't think it's going to happen though. Because like, it's kind of a gimmicky thing, but it would be cool. I mean, I wouldn't mind it. So
yeah, that's fair. And like you said, it really depends on who you are. Like if you travel a lot or you're in a lot of, because I know though part of it I think is probably to protect against the whole. There was that thing a couple years ago that's probably still going on where we saw a real rise in like the people snatching your phone at like a bar or something. And it's like, okay, cool. Apple and Google also addressed that with their like stolen phone protections, and it was probably a little bit more meaningful than a privacy screen. Why don't you roll that out? Especially because it's built into AOSP, as far as I understand. I could be wrong about that part, but like, why don't you just do something like that? So I don't know.
Yeah. I think it might be part of like Samsung's proprietary like One UI thing. Is it One UI? I can't remember what they call that.
No, it's One UI.
Yeah.
One UI 8.5 that is now like 8 months behind schedule. Yep.
Oh, okay. I'm excited. I saw you were working on that. I'm excited to see what you say, because I honestly don't know that much about Samsung. Yeah, so definitely, I don't know if you want to link it or.
I can't. I'll ask Jonah if that's okay. But I will say for the record, I found myself corrected on a few things. There were a few things like I was going to bring up the One UI 8.5 thing because I thought they were like a year behind on Android 16. Turns out I'm wrong on that. They have pushed out version 8 already had Android 16. 8.5 is just like the next like major build. And they have been pushing out security updates. So there was that. And I swear to God, I remember a story where their source code got breached and people looked at it and said it was really bad. But I cannot for the life of me find that anywhere. So I dropped that part too. So I just want to make the point that it's not me just like making up things and looking for reasons to hate Samsung. Like I did my research, and if I'm like, okay, that wasn't how I remembered it, I didn't include it because clearly I was wrong. So yeah, I don't know.
Hey, fair enough. No blind hatred here. Just facts, you know.
Hopefully.
So yeah. So okay. What do we?
All right, let's. I think we'll move into site updates now.
Yeah.
On that note, we are going to talk about RightsCon in a little bit because that is a unsettling and chaotic story. But first, we're going to talk about what's new over at Privacy Guides, and it's actually been a little bit of a slower week, at least in terms of visual progress. There's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes. We have a new video coming out that I guess Jordan's been editing, so I don't know how far along you are, but I'm imagining probably pretty far along by now. Hopefully we'll have that out to you guys. What do you think, next week, or is that too ambitious?
I'm hoping to get it finished this weekend, so we'll see.
Okay.
We'll see.
So potentially next week, we'll see how far we get. I'm already scripting the next video with a lot of help from Jonah. And I think that's going to be a good one. I'm excited about that one. We're going to revisit some basic topics, but also it's one of those topics that has had a recent update. You'll see what I mean when it comes out, but yeah, that's kind of all that's been going on the video side. Like I said, not a ton to share, but it's been good, solid progress, I think.
Cool.
Yeah. Is there anything going on the site side of things, Jordan?
Yeah. So there's, like I said before, like Free has been working on news articles as usual. There was another. They're currently working on one here about the CopyFail one, the one that I mentioned before. And there was also another one that they posted where apparently Firefox has quietly added Brave's Rust-based ad blocker. So, they're taking some inspiration from Brave there. That's interesting. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can check it out at privacyguides.org/news. Do you have something you want to add on that one, actually?
I was just going to say, I'm super excited for it personally. I would love to see Firefox ship by default with an ad blocker. So, we'll have to see like what kind of lists they enable, the block lists and stuff, and what it's going to look like for the end user. But yeah, I'm definitely going to try to keep an eye on that myself. So definitely read that article if you're a Firefox user. I'm a big fan. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. I think Brave is like, that's the one thing that I think Brave has absolutely nailed. Like, it should be included. Like, come on, Firefox. Like, it'd be really good if, like, there was two different, like, we didn't have to rely on uBlock Origin, right? Like, if there was Firefox had its own inbuilt ad blocking system similar to like what Brave is doing, it'd be pretty cool. And I think it would give people better privacy by default, which is what we're here for. That, like, that's exactly what we want.
And it's also just, it makes it such an easier sell. Like right now, usually when I try to get people to switch browsers, I'm like, yeah, just switch to Brave. And, I get why some people may not like that. And I'm with you on that. But also it's like, yeah, because I can tell them just switch to Brave and it's got the ad blocker. It's got good defaults. It's like, everything's good to go. Not that you can't make it better for the record, but it's pretty much good to go. Versus if I tell somebody, I'm like, yeah, switch to Firefox, but also like you have to download uBlock Origin. And when you start adding in steps, people are just like, oh, dude, I don't. And I know it's ridiculous because it's like, it takes 2 seconds, right? But for some reason, like it's a mental block for people that they're just like, I already have to switch browsers. Now you're telling me to do more stuff. So like, if it comes built in with an ad blocker, I think that's going to make it so much easier for people to just like, yeah, switch to Firefox or Brave, whichever one you prefer. And it's just that one click. And then maybe later they can go change some settings, but yeah.
Yeah, I think that also the thing that I think is important with Brave though is, or any browser that comes with an ad block included is, if you give people the choice, people are going to use the ad block. Like, I feel like not many people would be like, yeah, I like ads. I like seeing garbage all over every web page, and I like watching YouTube ads. It's like, not many people really enjoy that. So I agree. It's definitely an easy sell. Like, Brave isn't a super easy sell to people.
I think I will say, I don't know if people enjoy that, but I know a lot of people will just default. Like I met so many people that are like, oh yeah, the ads don't really bother me. But then once they start seeing life without an ad blocker, they're just like, wow, this is a completely different internet. So yeah, it's
Yeah, I mean, I don't mind ads per se, like if it's like a non-intrusive one, but we've gotten to the point where the internet is like, do you want to accept cookies? Do you want to join our newsletter? Do you want to watch this auto-playing video with audio? Like, no, I don't. Like, if it was less intrusive, like maybe I would be somewhat more okay with it, right? Like, I'm not completely against it, but it's just, we've gotten to a point where it's just so irritating.
I know I've told this story before, but my brother was one of those people that was like, yeah, the ads don't really bother me. They got to make money somehow. And even he at one point texted me and was like, hey, what's that ad blocker you always talk about? Because like these YouTube ads are just out of control, man. So it's hitting a point where even the people who say they don't mind are getting sick of it. Yeah, for sure. So
Yeah, like a 3-minute video ad. Oh, YouTube, what are you doing? Anyway, kind of refocusing here. So Nate also put together, so if you don't know already, like Nate puts together like a data breach roundup every week. So you can kind of keep on top of what is, where if your information has been breached. It's not every data breach, obviously, because I feel like that would be a lot to cover, but it's like basically the biggest ones that were this week. So kind of giving a quick overview. Vimeo had a third party breached. Hackers have threatened to leak over 9 million Amtrak records. Medtronic confirms a breach after hackers claim 9 million records theft. And ADT confirms a data breach after shiny hunters leak thread. So check out that. If there's like stuff you want to kind of know about those specific things, or if you want to see if you've had a breach or not, that'll be good to check out. And I'd also recommend, if you do enjoy these podcasts, you can go to privacyguides.org/live streams, and you can subscribe to get those into your inbox. And you can also find this news updates section. You can also subscribe to that to get that to your inbox as well. Basically gives you an option to choose what you'd like to get to your inbox. So if you do appreciate that, definitely check that out. All right.
Yeah.
So I just want to mention, do you want to add something?
I was just going to say it's it's whatever data breaches I find. So that's the caveat I give people, is there may be more that didn't come across my news feed. We always find out about a lot of them after the fact. So I wouldn't rely on it as a Bible, but hopefully it'll let you guys know if something you use had a breach. So
yeah, especially because not every company, sadly, is disclosing this to their users properly. We hope that most companies are doing the right thing, but a lot of companies will try and minimize the damage. So it is kind of important to keep up to date on that stuff. But I do want to mention all this is made possible by our supporters, and you can sign up for a membership or donate at privacyguides.org, or pick up some swag at shop.privacyguides.org. And you can see there, Nate's got one of those water bottles you can check out. And basically, Privacy Guides is a nonprofit which researches and shares privacy-related information and facilitates a community on our forum and matrix where people can ask questions and get advice about staying private online and preserving their digital rights. Now, let's dive into this story about Talkspace.
Alrighty, yes. So Talkspace, I hit a button. Talkspace, many of you have probably heard of Talkspace or similar apps to Talkspace. It's an online therapy app, kind of like BetterHelp or one of those. I have mixed opinions on those personally. I'm a big proponent of therapy. Very open. I have depression. I've been in and out of therapy. I've been on and off medication over the years. It's been really great for me. And I also, growing up as a teenager in the days of instant messaging and stuff, I understand how sometimes it can be a little bit easier to open up to a screen instead of a person. That is actually a known psychological phenomenon where, like, when ironically, when there's not a face in front of you, it goes both ways. Sometimes having a face humanizes it and makes the emotional connection better. Other times it makes it a little more anonymous, so it's easier to open up. But unfortunately, a lot of these apps are riddled with privacy concerns. I mean, the headline of this article is kind of really says it all. So this woman, I believe there was a, let me double check here. Was this the same story I was thinking of? I believe this woman was let go from a job. I'm trying to scroll down and find that part to make sure I have the story right. But basically, like, I'm trying to explain why her stuff came up in a court case. But I'll find it while I'm talking. But yeah, I think she was involved in she was let go from a job, and she tried to sue for discrimination and basically say that she was wrongfully let go. Yes. Okay. So she tried to sue for pregnancy discrimination because she was almost 9 months pregnant. And ultimately the judge decided that wasn't what happened here. The company said they shut down her location just for financial reasons, which is really unfortunate. But as a part of this court case, for some reason, or backtracking a little bit, when she was let go, she turned to Talkspace because, again, she was like almost 9 months pregnant, and she was opening up to this therapist about like how worried she is that she may not be able to find a job when she's so close to going into labor. And for some reason, this was considered part of the evidence that was entered into court. And I think, I mean, as far as that story goes, it's very straightforward. But what this article really, and I don't mean like there's no story here, but let me explain. What the article really explored a lot more and focused on was the idea that like these online chat apps are really kind of dangerous, unfortunately. Because, you know, one therapist that they talked to found or kind of pointed out that it's like most therapists don't keep transcripts. Like when you go in person and talk to a therapist, they might write some notes. And a lot of them, like after the session, they'll summarize what happened, but they don't keep a word for word transcript of everything that happened. And there is a lot of like kind of branching out from there. You know, actual therapy is protected by a lot of legal things. And obviously, like when it comes to a court order, a lot of these legal protections in any situation kind of go off the table. But the problem is a lot of these apps don't even offer that basic level of protection. You know, this article does mention HIPAA, which is the worst thing in the world that we could possibly cite when it comes to these kind of stories, because HIPAA does not have really hardly anything to do with privacy. They said that it requires people's information to be de-identified, but that's probably about it. HIPAA is not really about privacy. It's really a lot more about, I don't know. It's just, yeah. So anyways, a lot of these apps have it in their terms of service that basically once you start using them, they can do whatever they want. And I mean, that's how all apps are, right? Except I think a lot of people don't realize that going in. And so this company, specifically Talkspace, they're very proud of the fact that they have one of the largest mental health data banks in the world, containing 140 million message exchanges. And they're going to use that to build an AI therapy chatbot. And I'm sure that'll go great. And we have definitely not seen any extremely tragic stories in the news thanks to chatbots. So I'm sure that'll go awesome. But I mean, these things are just riddled with problems. We have seen, there was, I believe in the UK, there was a very similar app that got caught selling actual transcripts to advertisers. So like not even the inferred data, like the actual chat logs to advertisers, not even to the court. I know this app, because I checked them on Wikipedia very briefly, this app and BetterHelp. I think BetterHelp was accused, but I could be wrong. This app was, or like BetterHelp, we proved it. This app, I don't think we proved it. But they have both been accused of not using licensed therapists and playing really fast and loose on like, maybe you're talking with a volunteer or something like that. And I don't know how they get away with that one, because there are very strict rules, even in between states here in the US. Like when my wife and I moved out of state, she couldn't keep her old therapist. And they were very upset about that because they had a great relationship and they were doing really well. But yeah, it's like, it's just crazy stuff. And it's really unfortunate. I don't know if we have too much to say about this story, but I think it's really important to highlight because, again, this frustrates me because therapy is freaking expensive, right? Like, I think everybody knows that. It's a form of healthcare. And at least here in the US, our healthcare system is incredibly broken. And it's so expensive, but it's so valuable, especially in today's day and age. And it's really unfortunate that this stuff is not being protected. There's no laws around this. It's not, I mean, I guess there's HIPAA, but again, that doesn't have anything to do with privacy. So it's really unfortunate that this is being abused the way that it is. And I will say, in my personal opinion, like if your choices are, I'm not going to go to therapy and I'm probably going to suffer, or I can take advantage of one of these apps, I would say it's still probably worth taking advantage of the app. But unfortunately, it's, you know, me personally, I always give the advice of like, don't lie to your doctor, right? We talk about like data breaches and how do you keep your data from being swept up? And in a lot of cases, you can use PO boxes, which for the record, you should still do this with your doctor. You can use a PO box, you can use a forwarding email address. But, you know, when I order something on Amazon, I can get it sent to a locker. I can use a fake name, something like that. When I talk to my doctor, I kind of have to be real about what's going on. They have to be able to treat me, whether that's a medical doctor or a therapist. And so it's really unfortunate that these things are just not being treated with the level of protection legally and technologically that they deserve. And I think that's just, it's unfortunate because, again, we talked earlier about when you're being surveilled, it changes your behavior. And so if I had to use one of these apps, like, again, if I'm in a situation where it's like I can either not get treatment and things are not going to go well, or I can go get treatment through one of these apps, just using the app is going to change how I talk and what I open up about. And that's just, it's so tragic. But unfortunately, it's something we have to let people know about because it's something you have to be aware of. So I don't think I have much more to say about that without going in circles, but that is what's going on with these apps. They're if you can go to in-person therapy, that would probably always be better, unfortunately, or even telehealth, even if it's recorded or not recorded, but even if it's takes place over Zoom or something, that's still probably better than these, unfortunately. So
I think one thing that's also kind of like an issue with these telehealth apps, like we've seen in the past, I don't know if anyone remembers, but BetterHelp was also an online, it's actually extremely, like, it's promoted a lot everywhere, on podcasts, on YouTube, basically everywhere. Like, I've seen like probably hundreds of ads for BetterHelp at this point, where they were sharing sensitive health data, and I think they were fined. Yeah, they were fined 7.8 million by the Federal Trade Commission in the US. So I think I do have some questions about this article in particular, though. Like, how exactly, like, it's how is it allowed that these records could become public, though? Like, isn't there some sort of like
I don't think so, because according to the article, really one of the only stipulations that HIPAA has is that the medical information needs to be anonymized, which is one of those things that, like, we always point out, it doesn't take a lot of information to de-anonymize somebody. Like, location is a really good example. How many people in the world spend 8 hours a day at one location and then 8 hours a day at another location? Probably not a lot. So it's the same thing with, like, a lot of therapy. Like, how many people have that specific backstory, have that specific combination of symptoms, have this specific, and I mean, also, like, when you're going through the log, like, or like when you're talking to your therapist, you're not going to use like made up names most of the time, right? You're not going to be like, yeah, so my ex, let's call her, I'm trying to think of a name, Alice, right? Let's call her Alice. You're not going to do that. You're going to use the actual name. And so it's just, yeah, I don't understand how. I think it's just one of those cases where, like, legislation has not caught up to the situation that we're in right now, is what I think it is. I think it worked back in the 1980s, but I don't know if it would work now.
Yeah, I don't think they thought we'd all be seeing therapists on our glass slabs and typing everything, our entire life into it. So
HIPAA was passed in 1996.
Yeah, definitely before any sort of
Wait, wasn't that when The
smartphone.
Matrix came out? When did The Matrix come out? Oh,
I thought it was
1999.
1999, but yeah.
I don't pay attention to this stuff.
Yeah. Anyway, so I guess the thing with this is, I think it's kind of this is kind of a clear breach of people's consent, right? Because when you're talking to a therapist, you consent to sharing very sensitive, sometimes things you would never tell anyone else, right? This is information and things you're telling somebody that you would never want to be public. So I think this is basically it's breaching the trust of everyone that uses the platform, I think. Obviously, there should be more protection. Like, I mean, I think that if there's these sort of telehealth apps, right, I think they shouldn't be saving the conversations. It should be end-to-end encrypted. It should be deleted after a certain period of time. Like, there should be more stuff than that. And apparently, according to this, it was saying there was, 140 million message exchanges. Like, that is a ridiculous amount of information. And even if it was, like Nate said, de-anonymized, like, if I'm talking about something specific to my life, I think it wouldn't be that hard to find that person. Like if you're talking about something pretty specific to you, right? So this is just kind of disgusting. And yeah, I think that, yeah, you're right. The laws definitely haven't caught up to this globally even.
Well, and just to add on to one thing you said, you mentioned like this is a violation of consent, except it's quote unquote not, because it was in the terms of service, right? The terms of service that nobody reads and that are also like super vague anyways. Like, we will share your data with trusted business partners for legitimate business reasons. And it's like, oh, cool. That's really specific. Thanks, bro. So yeah, I mean, that's another major problem that everybody's identified for years, is just these terms of service are so broad and so vague that they allow the company to do basically anything they want. And it's just, yeah, unfortunately, that's another, I mean, there's so many things that need to be fixed about our system, but that's a big one, I think. So.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, someone said in the chat, wait, what is happening? Yeah, this is kind of a
Here, I'll
random
pop it
time
back
to
on screen real quick.
Yeah, so there was this app called Women's Talkspace, which is like a therapy app, which breached a bunch of people's information. I guess if you want to learn more about it, check out the articles about it, because we did kind of talk about it already. Yeah, so there was another person whose name is thank you for your podcast. And then they said, coming from mental health, a lack of privacy absolutely destroys the therapeutic alliance with the client. Pretty much, yeah. Like if my therapist or psychologist started telling random people what I was telling them, I would be kind of disgusted and I would never see them again.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, imagine you walk in and your therapist is just like chatting with the receptionist. They're like, yeah. And then they said this and they said this. And it's like, what the fuck? I'm never coming back here. Like, that's basically what they're doing. It's crazy.
Yeah. But apparently because it's a digital platform, it's suddenly acceptable. But yeah, this was really awful.
What were we, we're talking about something. Oh, I think it's coming up still, but we were mentioning the, you know, the some of the issues with the laws in America as far as privacy is that a lot of them are really solid in the real world, but haven't moved online. So things like the third party doctrine, where it's like, oh, when you hand your data to a third party, you lose control of that data. So like if you, trying to think of an example that would have applied under the third party doctrine. I don't know, if you bought something at a store, right? Then of course they're going to have like that transaction, the receipt, they're going to have you on the security camera or whatever. But that one hasn't really translated very well into the digital world, where you're handing over data to like everybody all the time. There's all these advertisers and analytics, and your ISP counts as a third party. And it's just like, but that's not the same. So yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting discussions that we're going to have to work out a lot of things to fix this, because yeah, this shouldn't be happening. But I guess we can move on here to the next and final story today. And so this one is about RightsCon. If you're not familiar, it's basically one of the largest like digital rights conferences. And last year it was held in Taipei, Taiwan, but this year it's being held in Zambia, which I'm not exactly sure where Zambia is. I'm going to sound like a silly Australian right now.
I want to say Southern Africa, but oh yeah, I'm not too far off.
Yeah, I was going to say South Africa, but okay. Okay, yeah, there we go. Sorry. I'm not too familiar with that part of the world. But yeah, RightsCon, a global conference of thousands of advocates, technologists, academics, policymakers, and others concerned with issues at the intersection of human rights and technology, was scheduled to kick off at Lusaka, Zambia on May 5th. But with just days remaining and with many participants already en route, the Zambian government officials announced that they would postpone the conference in order to, in quotes, ensure full alignment with Zambia's national values, policy priorities, and broader public interest considerations, unquote. So that does sound slightly red flaggy. You know, this is like a conference where they're discussing people's right to free press, people's right to free speech, people's right to privacy in their own home. Like, this is definitely like a human rights conference, right? So this is like extremely sus already. And basically, on Wednesday, after attempting to negotiate a solution, RightsCon organizers announced that the event, in quotes, would not proceed. So yeah, basically the event is not going to happen, according to what our latest information is. On Thursday, the Zambian news site News Diggers published a report citing well-placed sources that told the outlet the summit has actually been cancelled because the program involves Taiwanese delegates who would potentially speak against China at a venue donated by the Chinese government. Ah, I see. So there's like some political issues going on. So I guess that could make sense. Yes, so there was a statement issued Thursday by the advocacy organization. Article 19 noted, we are aware of claims, many of them well-founded, that pressure from foreign governments contributed to the Zambian government's decision. So, yeah, this is, I guess, not great that there was like some pressure to get this cancelled, because I guess we can know that, you know, China is sort of one of the largest countries in the world that has a pretty elaborate censorship scheme and, I guess, opposition to digital rights. They have, you know, the Great Firewall of China that's blocking a lot of traffic outside the country, which does limit the free flow of information, and also the large-scale camera systems that they have in the country, which, you know, they have like a ridiculous amount of cameras. So I can see how, you know, there might be some friction there. And there was also this update here. The Tor project actually did a little toot on Mastodon, and they said basically they are standing in solidarity with RightsCon and Access Now local organizers, basically to they wanted to highlight it because the circumstances behind the cancellation underscore the urgent fight against censorship, surveillance, and restrictions on civic participation. And they also released like this blog post along with that. And yeah, so RightsCon is basically about the right to assemble, associate, and speak freely. And this conference being cancelled is kind of like a slap in the face of that particularly. I think everyone in this community is kind of on the same page when it comes to this stuff. People should be able to assemble, associate, and speak freely. And, you know, people's digital rights are important. So it's not great that this is being cancelled, because, you know, human rights are important, like online and offline. But yeah, that's sort of what I thought of this. I think this is just concerning. We can see like the control that foreign governments have over stuff like this, but it's unfortunate to see this conference cancelled.
Yeah, I don't think I have much to add to that. It's very it reminds me a lot of well, I mean, first of all, I think it's important to note that this first article that we quoted from said that according to the nonprofit watchdog Freedom House, Zambia ranks as partly free, and they know, and that's on digital rights and free expression. The government has imprisoned individuals for online speech critical of the current government, and journalists are experiencing increased harassment. So to me, this for any sci-fi fans in the room, this reminds me of a few years ago when they decided to host the Hugo Awards in China. And one specific author who my wife really likes, I have her book actually, and I need to read it. I think it was the book Iron Widow. I could be wrong. I can't remember the author's name. I'll look it up. But she was like shortlisted. Like everybody knew, like this woman, actually, I may have their gender wrong. I'm sorry. This person, everybody knew that this person was like guaranteed to be at least nominated. And did not so much as get a nomination. And then it turned out later that the government had pressured the Hugo Awards not to nominate this person or like pay any attention to this person because they were of Chinese descent, and the government didn't like whatever their political positions were or something like that. And I remember when that happened, I sat there and I'm like, so whose genius idea was it to host the Hugo Awards in China? Like, if we knew this was a possibility, like not even this specifically, I'm sure they didn't know that specifically was going to happen until like a week before or something. But also, like, why would you willingly choose to host a convention in a country that is notoriously critical of anything that casts it in a negative light? Just knowing that literature, and sci-fi included, is like one of those things where you kind of push the envelope sometimes. You present new ideas that may not always be popular. And I just remember thinking, I'm like, why would you do that? Like, why would you even tempt fate like that? And this feels the exact same way to me. It's like you decided to host a human rights convention in a country where the government has currently imprisoned people for online speech critical of the government. Journalists are experiencing increased harassment. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. That just blows my mind. But that's kind of my only thought is I don't like want to like victim blame anybody here, but like I feel like the organizers should have known better than to do that. That's kind of my main thought.
Yeah, I mean, that is one way of looking at it, but I think, you know, this could have been a good platform to discuss a lot of these issues in the country, right? Like, you know, there's obviously, I think we
I guess
didn't
that's
really
fair.
know, you don't really know what is going to happen. I think reading down to the end of this of the article here from Tech Policy Press, China has significant leverage in Zambia, according to a database of Chinese foreign investments maintained at the College of William and Mary. China donated $30 million for the construction of the Mulungashi International Conference Center, where RightsCon was to take place. It represents just one of hundreds of investments in Zambian infrastructure, totaling nearly $13 billion over the past decade, according to the William and Mary researchers. So I think this was less to do with this was more like a political thing, right? Like I think just so you know, like the last conference was held in Taiwan. There was clearly people that were, you know, supportive of, you know, people's right to a free assembly, which isn't always guaranteed in China. So I think it kind of goes against the values there, and I think that's kind of the reason why this was cancelled. But I think, you know, I definitely see your argument that, like, why would we host it there? Like, if there's a possibility that the Chinese government isn't going to like that, is it really a good idea to like do it in the backyard of them? Like, is that really a great idea? I mean, I think it would have been interesting though, because, you know, maybe it could have been a good time to discuss a lot of those issues, but I guess they overestimated the allowance of that to happen.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You do make a solid point where it's like, why not go, you know, I grew up in the church, so I know a few Bible verses, and like one of them is where they were criticizing Jesus for hanging out with sinners, and he's like, well, yeah, the healthy people don't need a doctor. So I kind of see that argument of like, yeah, why not go to the country where these are happening? And User Zero made a good point too. Like, is there any country where this stuff isn't happening? And I mean, objectively, yes, there's places that are much more open and free and accepting of that kind of stuff. But I hear your point. It's not exactly like, yeah, just throw a dart and anywhere it lands is good. Like, the choices are relatively limited. So that's a fair argument.
Yeah, I do think, you know, it's also important for people in the global south to have these conferences there as well, right? Because, you know, not everybody can afford to travel all the way to the United States, or, well, I guess
Europe, or
any sort of country that's in the West, I guess, or like the global north. So even a lot of those countries, I probably wouldn't travel there. So, you know, there's all sorts of things like that. But yeah, this was just like an important little one that we wanted to cover. It's unfortunate, but it is kind of surprising that this was it happened so like this seemed like it was going to go forward, and then it suddenly was cancelled. Which I think, if it had just been like immediately, the Zambian government said no, that would have been fine. But since it happened so close to the start, it was like kind of a big story. At least on Mastodon, I saw a lot of people talking about it. So yeah.
Yeah, and 404 wrote a couple articles about it. They actually just published another one right before we went live with like the latest update. So yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Did you notice there was anything to add, or?
I didn't really have a chance to read it, which is why I didn't include it in the links, but I'm sure it's good. It's, 404 does great work. So
yeah, cool. I guess go check that out then, if you're interested in learning more about this story.
Also, just in case anyone is curious, it's Ziran. I'm totally going to pronounce this wrong. Ziran J. Zhao? I don't know. The book is called Iron Widow, but yeah, in 2022, 2023, they were a finalist for Astounding Award for Best New Writer. They received enough votes to be a finalist, but were declared ineligible and removed from the ballot. It later emerged that this was due to self-censorship by the Hugo Award administrators, which was held in China in order to appease the Chinese government. So, yay. This kind of stuff happens. Anyways. I just in case anyone else was curious, for me to wrap that earlier thing up. So I think in a minute we're going to start taking viewer questions. I know we had somebody leave a question earlier, and we'll definitely go back to check that out. If you're holding on to any questions, go ahead and start leaving them in the chat. But for now, we're going to head over to the our community forum, where there is always a lot of activity. This week, there was a lot of activity when I sorted by the latest chats this week. Busy week in the forum, but specifically, I think we were going to focus on a post here that again was almost a finalist for the news. It's just there's so much happening this week. But there's a rumor that Signal is working on a standalone version of a desktop app that does not require a mobile phone. Now, to be clear, it will still require a phone number. That's not going away. And I know that's a very controversial requirement, but let's see here. So there's, I'm going to switch over and show this article on screen real quick. If I can remember to share my screen. Haha. But yeah, somebody spotted this in one of the latest Git commits on GitHub. There we go. Oh, come on. This is a very difficult program to work sometimes. There we go. So yeah, going back to the top, this comes from a website called About Signal. And it says that it was on the latest Signal desktop commit history and makes several improvements to the registration flow. The feature has not been officially announced, but since we saw it in the commit history, I'm not going to say it's official, but it's kind of one of those, like, there's always rumors going around, but I think since we see some evidence of this in the Git commits, it's like, okay, let's maybe pay attention to this a little bit more than usual. And it says that users may soon no longer be forced to use a smartphone, such as Android or iOS. And instead, you will be able to sign up on Signal Desktop, and you can use just a regular mobile number or a landline, which includes basic mobile phones or dumb phones, which I think is kind of new and old. In the sense that, like, I think Joseph Cox or somebody wrote a blog post one time about how they managed to sign up for Signal without using a smartphone. And basically they found like one of the last payphones in America and had Signal call them and deliver like a sign up code over the phone. I don't think it was like a person from Signal, but I think this was a feature they used to offer. So it seems like it's kind of coming back now. And then I think they go on to talk about some of the other updates coming into that app. But yeah, I mean, that's kind of the exciting part that I think we're super interested in. Did you have any thoughts on this one, Jordan? I mean, I'm excited about it. I know the phone number requirement is very controversial in general, but I think anything we can do to lower that barrier to entry and give people more access to like secure communication, I think is good. What do you think?
Yeah, I think like a lot of times, I think having a mobile phone requirement is a bit frustrating. Like, for instance, I've got 2 Signal accounts. Like, I have one that I use for work and then another one that I use for personal stuff. And now I have to have a second phone that just has to be on to like has to have the account on it. So it is kind of annoying that you have to have like or I guess if you had an Android, you could maybe use a different profile. But it's kind of frustrating that that's been a requirement when, I think you could do that with an iPad. Yeah, you could do that with an iPad. You could have an iPad as your main device. So it kind of makes sense that they would allow this on desktop, but it's kind of been an ongoing thing. And I think when it comes to these like source code leaks as well, like we saw like, username support leaked through the same way, right? We were like looking at the source code and we saw, there's like this mention of usernames in the source code, but they're not added yet. So, and we did end up getting that feature eventually, kind of took a while, which is kind of the usual with Signal. I kind of appreciate Signal's slower rollout of features though, whereas, I feel like a lot of projects or I guess products are sort of taking the move fast and break things approach, which isn't super great from a stability standpoint. But yeah, I'm kind of excited to just be able to use this instead of having to have a second phone because yeah, it's kind of been an ongoing issue. I know that a lot of people are going to like this once it finally releases, if it releases, which all signs point towards yes, but there's always a possibility of it not. Okay, so someone in the chat said, is X the only way to watch the stream? It feels uncomfortable. Yeah, so I think, I'm not exactly sure because I don't have a Twitter account. I don't know what it looks like, but you can also watch this on StreamYard, which is basically a platform agnostic way. You can also watch this on YouTube. You can watch this on TikTok. Wouldn't recommend it. But you can. Twitch, Kick, LinkedIn. Yeah, all those platforms. So it's across all those if you want to switch. But if you want to find our YouTube channel, it's just Privacy Guides. It's an easy way to find that. It's whatever platform you prefer. We just find that there's at least we get quite a decent amount of traction on Twitter. So that's why we broadcast there. It's important to get this message out to as many people as possible.
Cool. Yeah. Sorry, I'm going through some of the comments here because some people were like, "Oh, I wish it worked with voice over IP," and I'm like, "Hey, did they change that?" But then further down, people are like, "Yeah, it does." Okay. So yeah,
it does. Definitely does.
Yeah, I was like, "Did they change that?" Because I definitely signed up with voice over IP. But and real quick on the topic of other places to watch, if you go to privacyguides.org/live streams, I think that'll take you. Well, it'll take you to the latest newsletter, and that'll take you to the StreamYard link. The forum we usually pin. Once we pick the headline story, we pin a post that has all the other places that we stream for sure. So, somebody went and posted them all here. So, cool.
Yeah.
Probably Jordan.
That was me.
Okay. I think it's time to move on to viewer questions. I have the forum post up here. Let me take a look. Not really a question, but somebody on the forum mentioned when we posted the headline story, which is, is Ubuntu becoming the new Windows? They said, speaking of Ubuntu, they are the first Linux OS option to come preloaded onto Framework laptops. So if you are interested in Framework or you are a Framework user, definitely be aware of that next time you go to buy one. I'm checking through here to see any other. Somebody posted here. They said, I don't know if this will still be relevant by the time the live stream happens, but at the time of posting this comment, much if not all of Ubuntu and Canonical's infrastructure appears to be down via a DDoS attack. Yes, I discovered that this morning when I went to so I have automatic updates on all my servers, but Fridays are or weekends are kind of when I sit down to like manually make sure I didn't miss any updates, run my backups and stuff like that. I know I shouldn't do it manually. I haven't had time to get around to making them automated, but I had that issue too because like all my servers were like not hitting And then on Cubes, I went to do Snap Refresh and I couldn't connect to the Snap Store. And I literally posted in the group chat, I was like, is FOSS broken today? Like, what's happening? And then like immediately after I asked that, I opened up my Nextcloud with my RSS feeder, and I saw like Ubuntu's been having like a DDoS attack for the last like 20 hours or whatever. And I'm just like, okay, that explains it. So need to read the news more often.
Definitely, it's been causing quite a lot of issues, I think. But I think one awesome thing about, like, at least when it comes to the apps, like, and when we talk about Linux package managers, is, you know, they have mirrors. So, you know, I personally don't use the official like repos. Like, I would prefer a local one, right? You can do that instead. You can still get updates that way. You could even set up your own local mirror on your own server in your home if you're nerdy like that. But yeah, it is kind of a random, unfortunate thing. The story, I think people kind of got a little bit confused by the title. I was kind of not really sure what to put as the title to give away the entire thing, but
I thought it was good. I liked it. But yeah, on that note, in the thread, I thought it was actually kind of cool. People started talking about what distros they prefer, and a lot of people talked about like gaming. Like a lot of people said they like to game on Linux, and so if you're a gamer, I'm told that gaming has come really, really far on Linux and is kind of almost at the point where, like, unless you're like a pro gamer or like there's certain like I know a lot of the anti-cheat games won't work very well, but if you're just like a casual gamer, definitely look into Linux, because I've heard it's really come a long way and it's a lot more gaming friendly than it used to be, and it's almost a 1-to-1. So
yeah, it's really frustrating with the anti-cheat stuff, and it doesn't really seem like the industry is moving in the right direction. Like, if you remember, there was Apex Legends did allow Linux easy anti-cheat to work on Linux, and they eventually just threw the towel in. They said, we've had too many people cheating, so we're blocking Linux, and that was it. You can't play it on Linux anymore, which is really unfortunate, because, you know, I guess, you know, games have got to balance the player experience with that sort of stuff. So I have seen NVIDIA performance is bad compared to AMD. That's what Lusser1 said. I mean, I would say NVIDIA cards are generally more powerful, but there's a bunch of issues with drivers in Linux, which is a whole nother can of worms, which you probably won't have as much of an issue with if you're using an AMD GPU, because basically you have to install proprietary drivers. I think it's been remedied somewhat now that we do have like open source kernel drivers, but there's still a proprietary part to it, which is another, you know, it's another barrier to getting people to switch, because it's like, oh, why isn't my graphics card working correctly? It's because you didn't install the drivers, which is a whole process, right? So I think that's also another issue, I guess, that NVIDIA causes.
This is not an official recommendation from Privacy Guides, but if you are interested in gaming on Linux, I highly recommend the Linux Experiment. I listen to his weekly podcast, and he focuses mostly on open source stuff. Every once in a while, there's some privacy overlap, but for the most part, he talks about open source specifically. And at the end of each episode, he specifically talks about gaming news, and he digs into like the drivers, and there's this new driver being released and this one versus this proprietary one, and the benchmarks. And so, I mean, if you're really into that stuff, I would say definitely check him out. He's a really good source of information for that, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think Linux gaming is like, we saw like even recently that like Linux is like cracking 5% on the Steam hardware survey, which is quite substantial. Like, when we talk about the amount of users on their desktop, it's a lot of people.
I think it's largely driven by the Steam Deck, because the Steam Deck, I believe, is based on Arch. But I mean, it's super user friendly. My wife has one. She loves it. She put Brave on it, so she can use it like a desktop now if she wants to. But yeah. It's pretty cool.
I think I'm going to get one of those. I've got a Nintendo Switch, but I'm like so done with Nintendo. Oh my goodness. I think I can give up with I can give up some Nintendo first party games and like switch to something that's a little bit better.
I'm very casual, so I mostly stick to PC games, especially because then I can take them with me when I travel. But I do have like my wife's. So my wife bought like a Switch Lite back when they first came out, and then years later she decided that she wanted to like start streaming Switch. So we upgraded to an actual proper Switch, and I like inherited the hand-me-down Switch Lite. So technically, I have a Switch Lite. I think I have like Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic as the only game I bought for it so far, because I just, a lot of the time I'm either at this point when I do have downtime, I'm trying to get caught up on like TV shows and movies and stuff. So like I think I just finally watched the latest season of Wednesday. Like that's how backlogged I am on stuff. But
oh geez, yeah. I'm backlogged on video games, and I'm also backlogged on TV shows, like obscenely backlogged. I've got so many things to get through. So
I am going to make time for Silo though. I'm so excited for that. But anyways, getting back to questions that people are asking. Nobody's asking about Silo, sadly. So Lucas said, what's your view on sharing personal information with companies when applying for jobs, knowing that third parties are building a database for marketing? I mean, unfortunately, I think personal opinion, I think this is just kind of one of those things where we don't have a lot of choice. Okay, so the best way to get a job still remains who you know, right? Like if you know somebody who's working at a company, they can put in a good word for you, but you still have to go through the official process, which means applying. And a lot of companies do have like a first party portal. So I guess that's pretty good. But even then that like first party portal really is like administered by someone like at my last job, I think it was Dayforce. I just had a coworker who was like, hey, I need a job. Are they hiring? Or a friend who was a coworker. So we were in the same industry. And I sent him the link and I texted my old boss. I'm like, hey, you should give this guy an interview. He's a really hard worker. But I still noticed when I sent him the link, I'm like, oh, this is just Dayforce. So it's unfortunately, I think it's what I try to do is I try to minimize things. So like I use a voice over IP number. I have an email dedicated specifically for work. I do still use like Brave and, all my usual privacy browsers. I try to use a VPN. I don't know. I think it's also like, how sensitive is this data really? Like, yes, it identifies you, like how many people have worked at that same specific set of jobs, but I guess it's like a threat model thing. Like, okay, they're going to build it for marketing. I mostly block ads anyways, right? So I'm not super worried about that. And also like in terms of a data breach, again, voice over IP number, I use a PO box. One thing I do is I don't put in, at least on the resume, I don't put in an actual street address. I just put in like a city, state, and zip. And then if they want to hire me, I'll give them a PO box. So I think it's like anything. It's about threat model, right? Like, what are you trying to protect against? For me, I'm mostly trying to protect against data breaches. And I think there's only so much you can do, to be totally honest. I mean, unfortunately, we still need to pay the bills. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's also interesting. I mean, I come from like not working for companies. I come from like being a contractor and working for myself. So, I mean, I don't know, not everyone has that opportunity. Like not everyone can do that. But I think that does give you somewhat more control because you are your own employer, like, I guess, which, not every job has the ability to do that. But I think that is one area that you can have slightly more control, I guess. But yeah, I've never really had a real job, question in quotes, like whatever, you know what I'm talking about. But yeah, so I don't know, maybe that's something else to consider, but it's obviously it's very applicable. It's very depends on your situation.
Yeah, I was a freelancer for a lot of years, and ideally that's the way to go, especially once I got into privacy. Because originally I was a freelancer before I was into privacy, and then once I got into privacy and I realized, I'm like, oh yeah, I could totally like put my PO box on all these invoices and set up a separate email, and like it's pretty cool how much flexibility you have as a freelancer in that regard. But yeah, not everybody has that, unfortunately. But.
And the taxes are awful.
Oh my God. My other project, the new oil, for intents and purposes, the government treats it, the company that I structured it as for privacy reasons, the the government basically views it as my personal money. So I have to pay taxes every year. I haven't gotten a tax return in years, which, to be fair, is a good problem to have. But boy, do I have an attitude every time I have to file taxes, because I'm like, damn, I don't remember Uncle Sam filing any pull requests or writing any blog posts or editing any videos. Don't get me started on the taxes. I'm so pissed. But anyways.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
brutal.
that's definitely a downside of that. Kind of happy that I'm an employee now. I don't have to worry about all the ridiculous tax structures. But yeah, there's ways to do that. Oh, someone in the chat has asked, Tam748 asks, what's Silo about?
I was going to get to that one. Not to get off topic. Silo is a post-apocalyptic sci-fi show. Think of it kind of like Fallout, but a lot more serious. It's humanity is now living in an underground silo, and they cannot go outside, and they don't know why. That's kind of the elevator pitch I would give. I love it. Wow. I got my sister into it. My sister actually watched it twice, which was wild. I forget what it was, but I texted her something one time, and she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm rewatching Silo," and I'm like, "Wait, what?" So my next goal is I want to get my wife into it next. But yeah.
Oh, that does sound pretty interesting, actually.
Stairs and more stairs. Yeah. Lesser one has seen it. He's not wrong. Lots of stairs. I guess we'll go back to, we got one more. How private are messages on Signal? I heard people had their messages leaked or something like that. So every single story I've ever heard about somebody getting their messages leaked on Signal has come from the endpoint being vulnerable, in the sense of like several, I think it was during the first Trump administration, somebody had their Signal hacked, quote unquote, because the FBI seized their phone and unlocked their phone and looked at their messages. Like, obviously there's no amount of encryption in the world that can save you from that. I know there have been, right now in Europe, there's actually been a lot of phishing attacks on politicians to get access to their Signal and their WhatsApp. So if they manage to, and a lot of the time what they'll do with, in the case of Signal specifically, I don't know how WhatsApp works, but a lot of the time what they try to do is basically try to trick users into linking the attacker's device. Like, basically it's a really clever way to get them to scan the QR code without realizing it. And so now the attacker over in Moscow or Beijing or wherever has a Signal desktop linked to your phone, and they get a copy of all your messages. And so those are the kind of things that, like, Signal has rolled out some things to try and slow down those kind of attacks, but those are things that are not vulnerabilities in the Signal protocol. Those are like phishing attacks. And again, like, your phone was unlocked. Like, those are things that we would expect to see with anything. So at this time, as far as we know, Signal is the most private and secure messenger out there, or at least like top 5, like point blank. I mean, there's really no arguing that. There have been so many experts from so many different political leanings, countries, fields of expertise who have looked at the code and been like, yeah, this looks amazing. This is really solid and secure. So they don't log any metadata. They're designed to be trustless, where like it doesn't really matter if the server is compromised. I mean, I guess you could argue maybe the server would be able to record some metadata in real time, but they won't be able to get access to your messages. They've had multiple court cases where they've had authorities request data, and the only data they ever have is when the account was created and the last time you connected to their server. So, I mean, yeah, how private are Signal messages on Signal? Governments around the world rely on it. So, and then Roy caught what I said. What about SimpleX? I'm less familiar with SimpleX, to be totally honest, but we do recommend it on privacy guides. It is very secure as far as I know. I think they are also working on post-quantum encryption. So, I mean, SimpleX is also really secure. It's a harder sell for people because there's less users, there's less features. I hate to say it, but like, when we're trying to make these tools accessible to people really care about the features. Signal got a lot of flack when they rolled out GIF support, but that's what gets people around: the group chats, the attachments, the GIF support, the user friendliness. And SimpleX is great. I have a SimpleX account, but it's just a hard sell. Like, if you can find people to use it, go ahead and use it. I'm not saying not to. You're just probably going to have a hard time getting your friends and family on it. And then
I don't know what I would do without my stickers.
I'm slowly getting more and more into GIFs. I hate to say it, but I'm really getting into GIFs. I'm starting to use a lot of GIFs. And then the last thing to, you don't even need a phone number for SimpleX. I think now we're kind of getting into like privacy versus anonymity. And I think it's also worth noting that Signal they save a hash of your phone number, not your actual phone number, if I remember correctly. So like in theory, the cops can't, I mean, I guess the cops could give them a phone number and be like, do you have this user? But they're not really going to get much from that. So I don't know. I think personally, I see the complaint. We just talked about this. I think I see the complaint with the phone number requirement. I think most people make it a bigger deal than it needs to be. Are there people who absolutely cannot use their phone number? Yes, I'm not going to argue that. Is that 90% of people? No. I'm glad that tools like SimpleX exist for people who are in that situation, but I think for people to just like completely throw away Signal and be like, oh, it requires phone number, it's trash. Like, I think that's a really strong overreaction in my opinion. But I'll be honest though, I'm a little bit of a Signal fanboy, so maybe I'm just biased.
Yeah, I mean, I think as well, like, I don't want to throw SimpleX chat under the bus or anything, but it definitely seems like it's technically sound. It's got a good foundation, right? I think the main thing, and again, this is my experience. I tried it like probably a year or two ago, maybe, and maybe a year ago. The setup process wasn't quite as smooth as Signal. So, I think Signal does kind of have an edge in terms of usability, but I think SimpleX does seem to be more of this, like you said, privacy first solution, right? They're not requiring user identifiers at all.
Yeah, and I think if I remember correctly, the founder of SimpleX said that one time is basically like when they started, they were really putting all their focus on security. And now they're at a point where like we feel comfortable with security and they're trying to put more emphasis on usability. And he's acknowledged that. He's acknowledged it's a shortcoming. That's just the particular roadmap that they decided to take. So I know we've already seen a lot of improvement in SimpleX in terms of things like battery life, for example. And I think in the coming years, we're probably going to continue to see more improvement. They actually just rolled out channels, similar to like Telegram channels. So I'm really interested to check that out personally. But yeah, I mean, I think in the coming years, hopefully we're going to see some real improvement on the user friendliness side of SimpleX. But yeah. We got one more question from Tim. It says, should we be using post-quantum cryptography? I feel like I've been talking a lot, so do you want to tackle this one first or?
Yeah, so we already did a video about like post-quantum encryption algorithms and like what the threat actually is. So if you want to check that out, you can, but I can give you the TLDR here if you don't want to watch that. Basically, it's a concern in the way that if your information and data is being collected, it could possibly be decrypted in the future. So, we're not at a point where quantum computers are at a point where they can, or even if we don't even, and we also don't even know if quantum computers will ever reach a point where they will be able to decrypt these encryption algorithms. Because I think it's kind of like AI. Like there's so much hype behind this. It's just hype everywhere. So I think, take it with a massive grain of salt when companies are saying, we've made our encryption quantum resistant or quantum safe. I think it's useful. It's a good thing that most people should be doing at this point. This is like a positive step in the right direction, but I think the main thing you should be focusing on is using tools that respect your privacy, that aren't going to be having the information in the first place. Like we were talking about with Signal, right? Like it would better if the service wasn't collecting the information at all. If the connection, it didn't even matter if the connection was encrypted or not, because they're not collecting the information in the first place. So I think it should be in every privacy tool's best interest to implement it. And we've already seen that now. Like, I think Molvad and Proton, and they've been rolling out these post-quantum encryption tunnels. And, you know, it's good to see that this is being adopted more widely, but I think it's not a major concern at this point. But I think it's definitely something that we need to see pushed forward in the next couple of years.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. There's a lot of debate, even among experts, about whether or not quantum computers will ever achieve their promised potential. I think right now it's one of those things where, like, we have the capability, so let's do it out of an abundance of caution, which, God, I wish more companies would do that, right? We'd have so many fewer data breaches and we'd have so much better privacy if everybody was just like, well, technically we can do it this way, so let's do it just to be safe. But yeah, I don't think it should be a deal breaker. Like, I don't think you should avoid a tool if it's not post-quantum encrypted. But I think if they've got it on their roadmap, or they're expressing an interest in it, or they're working toward it, or they've already implemented it, I think that's definitely a plus for sure.
True. Yeah. So Roy actually gave another comment here. It's so cool and super fast to open an account with SimpleX. Very handy when you have many profiles on Graphene OS. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I could be wrong. I could actually be 100% wrong on that. Maybe they've rejigged their setup flow. So yeah, take what I say with a massive grain of salt. I haven't used it in a long time. Maybe, I guess, Nate, you haven't set up a new account probably in a long time, so it's probably not helpful either. But
not super recently, to be honest. I think a few months ago I set up because one of the only things I don't like is there is no like cloud sync of your database. So if you I don't know, if you have a phone that literally explodes or something like that, you might accidentally lose your account and all your contacts and everything. So it's on you to keep really good backups, which I don't always keep as good of backups as I should. Actually, I'll tell you exactly what happened. Is when I left surveillance report, I think we shut down we had a business account, and I was trying to shut that down, and I accidentally deleted all of my accounts on SimpleX. So I had to make a new one. But yeah, that was like end of last year, beginning of this year or something. So not recent. I don't remember it being like crazy difficult, but it's certainly not like something like Session or Signal where it's just like, yeah, basically just keep clicking and eventually you'll get there. Like, you do have to put a little bit of thought into it. So yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's cool.
Alrighty. I think since that was all our questions so far, I think we'll go ahead and call it a week. So all the updates that we talked about will be shared on the blog every week. So sign up for the newsletter or subscribe with your favorite RSS reader if you want to stay tuned. Don't forget that if you sign up for that newsletter, that also acts as a reminder because it goes out right when we start streaming, and there's a link to the StreamYard stream in there. So super handy. For people who prefer audio, we also offer a podcast available on all platforms and RSS. This video will also be synced to PeerTube. Those last two are not in real time, but if you prefer audio or PeerTube, those will definitely be there. Privacy Guides is an impartial nonprofit organization that is focused on building a strong privacy advocacy community and delivering the best digital privacy and consumer technology rights advice on the internet. If you want to support our mission, you can make a donation on our website by going to privacyguides.org/donate. You could also go straight to the website and click the red heart icon located in the top right corner of the page. You can contribute using standard fiat currency via debit or credit card, or you can opt to donate anonymously using Monero or your favorite cryptocurrency. Becoming a paid member unlocks exclusive perks like early access to video content and priority during the This Week in Privacy livestream Q&A. You'll also get a cool badge on your profile in the Privacy Guides forum and the warm, fuzzy feeling of supporting independent media. So thank you all for watching, and we will be back next week with more news.
Thanks, everybody.